The new Premier League season is just days away. And last year, Arsenal managed to end a 22-year drought. After 3 consecutive seasons of finishing second, they were finally crowned Premier League champions. But how do you do it again? Because it's not an easy thing to do, reigning Premier League champions to win again. Manchester City and Pep Guardiola have made it something that seems so effortless, having done it 3 years out of 4. But it's not. And if you look at Liverpool last season, that tells a heck of a story. Liverpool spent £500 million on a team that had won the Premier League. Twice in the same window did they break the most expensive transfer fee for a Premier League player ever, both Alexander Isak and Florian Wirtz. And yet, they finished well short of even challenging for the title. So how do you, as a club, manage to challenge for the Premier League and win it a second time in a row? Well, for Mikel Arteta, he has advantages in his side. This year, there's no pressure to have won a title because you did it last year. And of course, that doesn't mean that the expectation drops and it's okay for Arsenal to not win the Premier League this year. They should win the Premier League this year. They are favorites. Now, I'm not going to say that nobody else has a chance to win it and that Arsenal should dog walk the Premier League. But if you look at everything else, if you look how all the other teams shape up, Arsenal is absolutely the most solid. They're absolutely the strongest squad. And I think they have no reason not to win the Premier League. That being said, they also have the advantage of having a title coming from last year. They don't have the pressure that they've faced over the last few years of having to win a title. It's not as tense. They can play with more freedom. And I think the Community Shield, take it with a grain of salt because people are always going to criticize that game. I think that game tells you a lot. How willing Arsenal were to be on the front foot. They weren't sitting back letting Man City have the ball. Arsenal went for Man City's throat. And it very much played out in their favor. If you look at the way they scored each goal, it wasn't set pieces. Now, I'm sure they're still going to be quite good at set pieces, but every single one of the goals came from open play. The first in 25 seconds. Very direct from Miles Lewis-Skelly, who found Ricardo Calafiori running in behind. The second goal is Odegaard getting the ball after he had carried it into the half. Noni Madueke pulled it back. Odegaard got his head up, saw a run, pinged a cross in, and it was a scrappy goal in the end, but those are the kind of goals you have to score sometimes. And then the third one is brilliant play. Odegaard wins it high up the pitch. Havertz drops it to Lewis-Skelly, who whips a ball into Zolas. Zolas drives at his man, squares it hard driven across the pitch for Odegaard, who beats a man to the spot, sits down the goalkeeper, and scores. Firstly, I think a huge factor in Arsenal's play this year will be if Martin Odegaard can continue to look as if he did the entirety of the World Cup and as he did in that game against Manchester City, because a really dangerous version of Martin Odegaard is one that is full of confidence. I believe Martin Odegaard has all the talent in the world. He has the talent to be the best number 10 in the Premier League, arguably one of the best number 10s in the world. But injuries have been a huge factor into his recent drop of form over the last 2 years, especially last year. There were flashes, but he couldn't stay fit. A fully fit and fully confident Martin Odegaard is going to remind everyone as to why he was compared to Bruno Fernandes, why he was even being compared to Kevin De Bruyne back in 22-23. I would even go on a limb. And, when you say things that are predictions, you open yourself up to look stupid. And if that's the case, fine. But I believe if Martin Odegaard has a fully fit season, there's a very strong chance that Arsenal win the Premier League and he is comfortably the front runner for Premier League Player of the Season. I think he will be crucial to everything they do this season. And when Arsenal start to run up the score on teams, 4, 5, I think you're going to see Odegaard at the heart of it. Because Arsenal are not going to sit back this year and protect 1-0 leads. I believe Arteta is taking the chains off. Last year he was very reserved. It was very, when we have a lead, defend everything first, and then if we can add a second, great. I think this year it's going to be we want to put 2, 3, and 4 in the back of their net before halftime. If you remember how Arsenal played in 22-23 when they came back from Dubai, they were coming off back-to-back losses rather, to West Ham and Fulham. And Arteta taking the squad to Dubai, and they came back. And they went on a run of scoring 6, 5, 4, 3-1. Those were the kind of results they were getting. They were absolutely trashing everyone in their path. I think that's the kind of football Arsenal is going to play this season. I think the restrictions that Arteta had on this team was being so focused on being solid and not making mistakes because it was so important that the trophy came home. I think this year they're just going to go out and play, and that's in a very, very dangerous attitude for this Arsenal team to have. And I don't think they're even done in the market. Christos Zolis looks fantastic. He looks really good. I think Bruno Guimaraes is a much-needed physical presence in the midfield that will unlock Martin Odegaard and Arabici Eze, and Declan Rice will be given more freedom, and Miles Lewis-Skelly will benefit from playing with someone like that. There are rumors that tomorrow Ezri Konsa will become an Arsenal player. I think that's a fantastic signing. While William Saliba is out, he and Mosquera will compete for that center-back position, and then once Jurrien Timber is back and Saliba is back, Konsa can play across almost the entire back line, par left back. He can fill in at center half. He can fill in at right back. I think that's a very good signing. But there's still talks of Kenan Yildiz becoming an Arsenal player. Obviously, they wanted Vinicius Jr. They tried to make it happen. It didn't. Whatever. Who's your next option? If it is Kenan Yildiz and Juventus are willing to let him go for the right price, it would be evident that Martinelli would have to move on. But the left-wing options of Kenan Yildiz and Christos Zolis, that's very, very dangerous. It would be about unlocking Victor Icarus next and seeing the return of Bukayo Saka back to full fitness and full form. Bukayo Saka, when he is playing at his best, again, last season was not his best by any means. But when he is at his best, let's not forget the player Bukayo Saka is. 2024. He was England's best player at the World Cup. At the Euro. 2022, he was England's best player at the World Cup. Bukayo Saka is not super flashy. He is not your silky winger that's going to coast past 2 or 3 defenders and then finesse one into the left side of the far post. But Bukayo Saka is effective. He shows up in all of the biggest moments. Bukayo Saka is someone that very quietly will rack up goals and assists. He will have a huge impact on this team if he can get fully fit. But that's the question, is can he remain fit? So I think the biggest question for Mikel Arteta this season is, how do you manage a squad without running them into the ground? Can you do what everyone has been telling you to do for the last 2 seasons probably, and rotate your squad properly? Because Martin Zubimendi was run into the floor last season. If you look at how well he played up until the back half of the season, he was playing fantastic. He was probably one of the best signings of the season, and then he got burnt out. Declan Rice was barely able to play at the World Cup because his thigh was holding on for dear life. Bukayo Saka, his calf issues, those come from overplaying. Noni Madueke was fairly run into the ground at one point. Martin Odegaard couldn't stay fit. It's because these guys are relied on to play 40, 50 games a season. That cannot happen. You have the depth now. If you look at the midfield options that Arsenal have this season, if you take into account everyone that could play midfield, not just the starters, but the entirety of the midfield, you're looking at the best in the world. Bruno Guimaraes, Miles Lewis-Skelly, Martin Zubimendi, Declan Rice, Mikel Merino, Martin Odegaard, Arabici Eze. That is the best midfield selection any club has on the entire planet. If you do not use that properly, Declan Rice does not have to play all 38 Premier League games. Bukayo Saka does not have to play all 38 Premier League games. Noni Madueke and Max Dowman are options. You could keep Ethan Nwaneri and he could play out there. And then Gabriel and Saliba as well. Those two have been overworked. You have to trust in Christian Mosquera. If you bring in an Ezri Konsa, you have to trust in him. You have to be willing to rotate a side, and that is the simple fact. Pep Guardiola was a master at it. He kept his players fresh, and that's why Man City always seemed to go on such a strong run at the back end of the season, because they were always fit. The only player in this Arsenal squad that should play every game this season is David Raya. And I say every game as in every Premier League game. The simple fact is, Arsenal's squad is more complete than any other one in the Premier League. Chelsea's is almost too large. But Chelsea also don't have the experience to compete in a title race. Liverpool, that squad looks like it's missing quite a few depth pieces. Man City, they have the squad, but I don't know if they have the coach. And their midfield's going to look really different without Rodri. I think Manchester United's depth is not there to compete on all fronts, and they're in the Champions League now. Spurs, their squad is actually really strong. I like a lot of what they did in the window, but again, they lack title-challenging experience, and while they're only playing one game a week, I just don't see that squad competing with Arsenal's. Arsenal have very few reasons not to be Premier League champions again this season. But that does not mean it's going to be easy. That does not mean they are going to dog walk the league, and maybe they do. But I do think they should be retaining this Premier League champion status. I do think that with the right managerial decisions from Mikel Arteta and a proper rotation of the squad, that they can challenge for a lot more than just the Premier League. And I think the ceiling is the treble. I think the quadruple is spoken about as something that's obtainable, but I don't know if it is. No club in England has ever done it. But I think the treble is very, very possible. And it's something that Arsenal should be hunting. So, that is where I stand on Arsenal in this Premier League season. I believe that with the squad that they have, and with all of their players finding the right form and the right fitness, that there's no reason that this team should not be looking at a monster year, a historic year. And all it comes down to is fight and the tactical decisions of just going for it, not being reserved, but putting your foot to the floor and seeing what comes of it. If they do go on to land a huge left winger like Keenan Yildiz, this Arsenal team might be looking at a Champions League.